folks, my name is Nick, this is Board Game Brawl, and we are going through my Top 100 Games 2015 edition. These are the 100 games I love the most right now at this point in time, and today we're talking about number 60 through number 51, so we are closing out the bottom 50 and getting into the really good stuff. And of course, we're going to have our second opinions from the Board Game Geek user crew, which is always a lot of fun. They are a very opinionated bunch. That's what I love about them. Now, here's an interesting thing I'll preface this segment of the list by saying, and I didn't really plan it this way. For whatever reason, a lot of brand new games to the list clustered up in this segment of the list. In fact, every game but two are brand new to the list. To be fair, a couple of those new games are not new games. They're actually omissions from last year's list. One of them, for real, I think I just totally spaced out on and didn't put on last year's list, but it should have been. But the rest of them, it's a weird thing. It just kind of happened that way. Remember, these are my top 100 games right now, so of course I am going to be biased towards games that I've played relatively recently that I am still obsessed with and still getting a lot of fun and enjoyment out of. I haven't burnt out on them quite yet, so take this with a grain of salt, I suppose, but I really do love all of these games. It's just kind of odd that they're all new and clustered together like this. But let's get on with it. Well, speaking of that, my number 60 is the game that I'm really shocked that I omitted last year. I think it was just pure negligence on my part, and that is Castle Dice, brand new to the list this year, but I've been playing it for quite a long time. It's one of the very first Kickstarter games I ever got, although I didn't actually back it on Kickstarter. I just bought it afterwards at retail when I heard a lot of buzz about it. This is a very cool, I would say it's almost a gateway style game. It might be a little bit too complex for some people, but it's a dice allocation game, resource management. You're drafting dice out of the center of the table, representing different types of resources that you want to use to build up your castle. You build different segments of your castle that get you various amounts of points. You can also build workers of different types, like peasants and farmers and knights, who will either help you protect your stuff or just help you get more resources. You can get animals that are going to give you different special effects during the course of the game. Like if you have the most, I think, chickens it is, you get an extra hand size. If you have the most horses, you're the fastest player and you get to go first in the next round, so on and so forth. Lots of really cool things here. I like the really chibi style artwork that's with it that still feels different than a lot of the other anime chibi artwork that I've seen. And it's got an obnoxious box. That's the only complaint I have about it. But other than that, it's a solid game, and I've had a lot of fun with it, and I can't wait to play the expansion. I've had that sitting here for a long time. I finally got to get around to it. But that is Castle Dice. I'm so sorry I left it off of last year's list at number 60. But Mogi Loves Ships says, not a game. One of the most common things I've heard in all of these negative comments. My number 59 is another omission from last year's list. I'm not sure if that's just because I wasn't as into it last year, or again, I might have just forgotten, but that is Room 25. Now, this is it's a cooperative game. The story of it is very much based on the movie Cube, which I had never watched before playing this game. And then when I played it with people kept saying, "Oh, it's Cube the board game." And I'm like, okay. And then that it led to me going after the movie and watching it, and it's okay. I can't really recommend it, but the board game is fun. This is all about a bunch of people who are randomly stuck in this like death maze of rotating rooms. It's a tile game where there's all these hidden rooms, and if you go into a room, it might be a trap, it might be poison gas or a shredder or something like that. And there's various ways you can play the game. You can play it fully cooperatively, which is not that interesting. You can play it purely competitively, which is not that interesting. Or you can play it as a semi-co-op game with traders. That is the way to play this game, and that is the most fun I've had with it. There is Room 25 Season 2, which I think just finally got a domestic release very recently, but you can watch my review of it. It's amazing because it should have been a full standalone game. It should have been like Room 25 2.0. But it adds a lot more stuff to the game, more characters, more special abilities, which were the one thing missing from the first one. It's solid. And as a whole, Room 25 is a great game with a unique theme. Easily my number 59 this year, at least. And Pilgrim 152, unfortunately, has a different opinion. Things moved, things happened, the game ended. It just didn't do much for me. My number 58 is a brand new game, and it is one of the games that is all the rage right this second. It actually came out, I think, maybe a few months ago, but that is Codenames from Czech Games Edition and Vlada Chvátil, who seems to make a completely different game every time that he designs a game. This one is his take on a party game, although I cringe when people call this a party game, because it's really best with 4 players. This is a deduction game where one player is the clue giver, the other player is the clue taker, and you play in teams. So with 4 players, you'd have it's a 2-on-2 match, and that is how it works the best. And there's a bunch of different random words out on the table, and the clue givers have like this grid, and they have to try to get their clue taker to guess the right words on this grid corresponding to these different color symbols that only they can see. I know that's confusing, but basically the clue giver is going to have to look at all the different words on the table and try to connect as many words as possible together with simple one-word clues, and try to get the other person to guess as many as possible. It sounds really simple, kind of silly, kind of stupid, themeless, whatever. It's great. It's so fantastic. I've had great success with this game. Everyone that I've introduced it to in my group has loved it. And that, for me, is surely a sign when there can be a consensus built amongst the disparate people in my group. That's an amazing sign of a good game, and I've had a ton of fun with it. It doesn't even ever need an expansion. It's one of the few games I would say it's totally fine the way that it is. That is Codenames from Czech Games Edition. PRD 1982 has a different opinion. If I hadn't known it was by a reputable designer like Vlada beforehand, that would have been a jaw-dropping revelation afterwards. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if this had been just another nameless Hasbro-style party game. Another new game, you're going to be hearing that a lot, at my number 57, is Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers. Now, I just mentioned that Codenames does not need an expansion. Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers desperately needs an expansion. Right now, it's still riding high off of the initial buzz of it, and I had a tremendously fun time playing it, and just played it very recently, and just really, really enjoyed it again. But I still sense that it needs an expansion, and it will be getting one soon. Nevertheless, it's a great game. It takes all of the Planeswalker characters from recent Magic the Gathering lore, well, I say recent, like the last 6 years or something, and pits them against each other in Heroescape-style combat. Now, this is actually what many people consider to be Heroescape 2.0. I've never played a ton of Heroescape. I've played it a little bit, so I can't really say that I have a dog in that fight. I just know that this game is a lot of fun. You summon monsters, you cast spells the same way you would in Magic, but it feels more tactical. It really does feel like a full-blown miniatures game version of Magic the Gathering. I can't wait for more stuff to come out. I hope that they come out with new terrain. If you do have Heroescape, you can reuse that terrain, so that's good news. Either way, this is a great game for a very cheap price, especially this holiday season on Amazon, so check that out. That is Magic the Gathering Arena of the Planeswalkers at my number 57. Storm Knight disagrees and says, Heroescape plus Magic the Gathering should be a peanut butter and chocolate sort of combo, but this game seems to miss the fun points of both. Maybe peanut butter and jelly would have been more apt. I don't know. My number 56 is Nations, the dice game, brand new to the list. Now, I never played Nations, the full-blown board game, which is like a really large, long civilization-building type game. There's some people in my group who love that game. I have zero interest in it, or a lot of games that are that long. But Nations, the dice game, immediately appealed to me because of the dice allocation and like the almost Yahtzee-style dice rolling mixed together with resource management and a lot of true Euro style elements. It's a pretty themeless game, but it's so much fun building up your dice, getting different types of dice, getting tiles representing your improvements as you go on through it. It's very, very fast, almost too fast, but you still feel like you are building up and getting stronger as time goes on, and games are always tight, which is something I always love. And again, it's another game that's been a big hit in my group, so you got to give props for that. That is Nations, the dice game from I don't remember the name of the publisher. I'm sorry, I tried. But I'm sure I'll make a notation for that. Baron says, terrible game. So many issues I don't even know where to start. I'm not even sure it qualifies as a game. See, there it is again. You might as well just roll 5 6-sided dice and add up the value of them all to determine the game's winner. My number 55 is one of a new breed of games that is surely going to spell the downfall of the entire industry until there is nothing left but a burnt-out cinder. And that is Alchemists, also from Czech Games Edition, brand new to the list. Of course, I'm exaggerating. Although, many people who commented on this game and one of the other games that came out around the same time, XCOM Enemy Unknown, or XCOM, whatever the subtitle was, XCOM the board game, said something very similar about these types of games because of the fact that they use an app, and then an app is required to play. And I'll admit that even I was like, how's that going to work? But I'll tell you what, it works fantastically, and Alchemist is an amazing game. It's a very heavy game, it's very hard to learn, and for that reason, I don't get it to the table nearly as much as I did back in the early days when I first got it, but still. Fantastic idea of you being a bunch of amateur alchemists who are trying to build up your reputation by making different potions, but the way that you make these potions are by getting ingredients which you then put on your secret screen and then scan with your phone or tablet or whatever device, and then everyone's got this working off of the same set of parameters. You scan it in and see what they mix together to make, and then you make a note of that, again, behind your player screen, and now you know what potion you get if you mix those two different ingredients. So you're experimenting, you're trying to sell these potions to adventurers, sometimes you have to risk it and sell them a potion you're not quite sure you know what it does, and then you eventually enter these potions into competitions as well. So it's highly thematic, it's highly fun, it's got wonderful mechanisms. It's just really great, and the app is so simple. I mean, there's nothing to worry about there. Everyone has a smartphone anyways. I mean, seriously, at this point. I mean, I never have the best phone. Even the current phone I have now is just like an okay phone, but even it has no problems running this game. So I don't know what people are complaining about, but they're just Luddites, I guess. But that is Alchemist, my number 55. You don't hear people talking about it as much anymore, but I still think it is wonderful. Paltrow, however, is one of those Luddites. This game will appeal to all those smartphone addicts out there, the ones you see forever texting with silly grins on their face. Imagine sitting around the game table with those kind of people. There are enough addicts out there to make this game a success, but I prefer the traditional board games with a bit of interaction. As far as I'm concerned, board games and apps don't go together. Let's hope this is not a sign of things to come. It's not me. There was no period in there. Let's stick with heavy games for a moment and go on to Argent, the Consortium from Level 99 Games. My number 54, also brand new to the list. Now, despite its anime-style artwork, and despite the fact that it's got a somewhat light theme of being a bunch of sorcerers and, again, students at a magical university, think sort of Hogwarts style, but through the eyes of Madhouse Anime Studios. Despite that type of theme and the artwork and all these different things and, bright and colorful miniatures, this is a heavy worker placement game with lots of variable setups in true Level 99 fashion. Like, no two games that you play this are ever going to be the same because of different tiles that come out, different characters, different types of magic, different setup and variables. The game is almost overproduced. There's so much stuff just in the base game, not even counting the expansions that are out for it and all of the extra bits. But I will say it's amazing for a lot of those reasons at the same time. It's got great elements of like all of your workers actually do. I love it when workers in a worker placement game do things. They're not just all the same. In this case, these are actually different types of wizards that have different spells and have different effects when you use them in proper ways. They might, fireball your opponents. They might lock down a space. They might do some crazy stuff depending on where they're put. And I just love that idea, as well as all the various tiles that do all kinds of wondrous things and going for all these different, you're trying to be the dean of this university, so you try to appeal to different faculty members, and that's a great aspect of it too. It's just a very thematic game that still has some Euro-style element roots to it, which means that it can be a good thematic game backed up by solid elements. And I wish that more people were talking about this game, actually. I hope that we get to see, as weird as it is to say it, I hope that we get more content for it eventually, although I think there's more than enough for it at this point. That is Argent, the Consortium from Level 99 Games. Fograsher says, "It is simply too much. It's difficult to remember a game of this production quality and complexity where I just wanted to think of ways to end the game faster instead of trying to find ways to win." Finally, we come to a game that was actually on last year's list. How about that? Ristorante, Italia is down 8 spaces from number 45 last year. Not a big drop. I wouldn't think too much about that. This is a fantastic Euro game there's a lot of Euro games in this section of the list, kind of, sort of. But this is a game all about running a restaurant, and it's great. I mean, first off, that's an amazing theme. There needs to be more games about that. But in this case, it runs you through like the whole gamut of running a restaurant. You need to get recipes. You need to cook. You need to cook well in order to maintain your customers. You need to outfit your restaurant with new tables and better stuff. You need to appeal to food critics who are going to be not randomly, but they're going to be stopping by your restaurant at certain points, and you need to have a good buffet of stuff ready for them to check out and to try and to be appeased by. It's great. You get more skilled as you go on, which enables you to do better recipes. And there's different game modes. You definitely should try the advanced mode. I think that's the best way to play it. And despite the colorful graphics, this is another game, just like I was mentioning before with Argent. Despite that, I think it might be a little bit too heavy for some people, but that theme is so strong and so universal that people can get into it, that I love it, and I love recommending it to people and introducing it to people who have at least tried a few other gateway-style games, upgrading them up to this one, and they typically love it. That is Ristorante Italia from Red Glove, I think is the name of the company. I'm really bombing out on the publishers today. I'm sorry about that. Now, here's the interesting thing about my second opinion. There really were no good, solid second opinions for this one. I always go for one that's a little bit poignant, short, sweet, funny, something like that. Nothing really fit the bill for Ristorante Italia, except for the one that I already used last year, and I wanted to do something different. So instead, I went with the next best thing, something I felt was pretty appropriate, which was I went on Amazon and went to the game Cooking Mama, Let's Cook, and went to one of their reviews and grabbed a 1-star review. Basically, they're the same thing, I would say. Dimitri J. Keating says, good, but it is a very judgmental game, and I felt very accused when I did some of the recipes. My number 52 is another new game to the list, and it's gotten a ton of buzz in the past year. Actually, ever since Board Game Geek Con last year, but since then, it's gotten an official English release, and it's gotten a lot of buzz all over again. It's called Mysterium from Asmodee, I think is the... Asmodee and maybe Libelit is the newest release, but it was originally from Portal Games, and it was called like Tajma Changi de Maestro, or something like that. Whichever version of the game you play, it's great. It's basically Dixit meets Clue. And you have a bunch of cards out on the table representing different aspects of a murder or a tragedy that happened at this old house or this old estate. And there's a murder weapon that you have to find, or at least some object relative to the case. And then a location where this tragedy happened. And then finally the person who is responsible for it, or the focal point of that case. And there's a bunch of different options out there. You and the other players need to work cooperatively together to whittle them down and get to what the right clues are. The catch is one of the players is a ghost, and that ghost is trying to feed the other psychic players clues through their dreams. And that's where the Dixit part comes in, because the cards that the ghost used to give the clues are very surreal and abstract-looking, beautiful cards that are very reminiscent in the same size as Dixit cards. You can even use Dixit cards if you really want to for this game, if you've played it enough times and seen the cards enough. And so and the ghost can't say anything. He can only communicate with those cards and try to get the other players to select the right types of cards out on the table based on the clues that they get put in front of them. It's an amazing concept, very thematic, very fun. Another game that everyone I've played it with has loved and wants to play again and again and again. Like, okay, I want to be the ghost this time. Or, no, okay, I want to be an investigator this time. Everyone wants to switch back and forth all the time and just have a ton of fun with it. Better with less players. Still a great game no matter how you choose to play it. The new version adds some stuff that's kind of unnecessary, but it looks fantastic. That's the thing. Any version of this game looks amazing. It just has great graphic design and artwork. But that is Mysterium from various different companies. My number 52. Rubia says, this is an example of a game where one person plays solo while 5 people watch them play. How is this considered so good? And the last one for today, this is number 51, which means we are going to get into the top 50 very soon. But the last one for this segment is Hanabi, which is down 8 spaces from number 43. Not a huge drop there, and I still love Hanabi. I still played it, I think, like a couple weeks ago. It's one of my go-to cooperative games as a filler game, something quick to play. For me, it works good with 2 players. It works good with, I think, up to 5 players of what it goes to, right? I've played it with every player count at this point, because I've played it dozens of times. Some people do not like the game. They will say, oh, it's a fine game. It's well designed. It's creative. It's really innovative. And I hate it because it's so stressful. If you're not familiar with it, it's a purely cooperative game, very abstract, technically what you're supposed to be doing is making fireworks displays, but what you're doing in the game is putting out rows of cards from 1 to potentially 5 of 5 different colors, and you need to make them in sequence. First the 1, then the 2 of that color, then the 3 of that color, and so on. And all you're trying to do is get points. Whatever card you get the highest for each of the colors is what you score as points, to a maximum of 25 points. Simple, right? The catch is you are not allowed to see the cards in your hand that you're going to be trying to put down on the table. Only the other players can see your hand and vice versa, and you cannot say anything like overtly about them outside of the rules of the game. Instead, within the game, you have to give clues, and the way you give clues is very creative. You have to point at someone's hand and say, okay, this, and this are this color, or this, and this are this number. And then you have to try to infer from the way that they're giving those clues within the boundaries of the game what they want you to do with that card. Did he tell me that clue because he wants me to play it? Did he tell me that clue because he wants me to toss it away and regain a clue? Or is he telling me that just to make sure I do nothing with it? That's what gets to be so fun, intense, and yes, stressful sometimes to certain people about the game, is that you're never quite sure what your partners are trying to tell you, but you need to work together as cooperatively as possible to make things happen. And that's what I love about the game ultimately, is that it really feels like you're working together so much more than many other cooperative games out there. It's just a solid design. Another hit from Antoine Bauza. That is Hanabi, my number 51. By the way, it's really cool if you get the Tile edition, which I have. It's easily available. Go for it. Schwarzkopf, however, says, in my work life, I never enjoyed jobs where I had to rely too much on other people, or jobs where other people had to rely too much on me. I mean specifically teamwork type projects, etc. This game is that to me. It makes me angry when someone says, why did you do that? It's illogical, or that clue made no sense. This is the only game I've ever quit in the middle. And that is an amazing place to stop. That is quite a second opinion there. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far. We are getting into the top 50 now, which is super exciting. I mean, I love all these games we talked about already. I really love the games we're going to get into very, very soon, working our way up to that top 10. Whoo boy, it's exciting. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for enjoying all these second opinions, because as I've said before, these people deserve to be heard. Their opinions are just as valid as mine, maybe shorter. And I promise that there won't be all brand new games coming up soon as well. Thank you so much. Hope you're having a great holiday. Take care.